100 is back, and we are here with our weekly reviews, the first of our weekly reviews for this year's competition, looking at both the men's and women's tournament. And we are very, very excited to be here. And joining me for this one is Harrison Burridge, our resident 100 fanatic. Harrison, firstly, 1 week on from the start of the 100 2023, what have you made of both of the tournaments so far?
I think it's fair to say it's been a thrilling start. I mean, we've had some rain, and I think that's kind of inevitable with the forecast we've had in the last few weeks around this country. But when they've got on the field itself, I think bar maybe two men's games, it's gone down to the last set. The women's, there's been a couple of thrillers as well. I think the other day, Welsh Fire against Southern Brave went right down to the wire as well. And it's just been fantastic to see big crowds in, all enjoying the action on the field, and then the players delivering as well. And it shows how important good drafts and bad drafts could be, as I'm sure we'll get into. But for week one, superb.
Meerkat cricket, it's brilliant, really, isn't it? All the gimmicky stuff, you can love it or hate it. I personally love it, but it's been a fantastic start to the tournament. We'll come on to the men's competition in due course, but let's start with the women's competition. And first off, Harrison, how good is it to for the women's game to have this stage?
Oh, it's massive. I mean, we've talked about it before, but when you look at other countries, you've got the Women's Big Bash, which is the front runner in any sort of domestic sort of stuff for women, and well, Australia as a whole now. But then you got the Women's IPL starting up in India this year, and it kind of felt crucial for the Women's 100 to kind of hit the ground running. And maybe it hasn't gone as well as you hope because of the weather, which I'm sure we may touch on at some point. But in terms of the stage, it's massive. You get all the best players with some fantastic overseas players alongside the domestic talent in 8 teams for 4 weeks or whatever it is, and in front of big crowds. I mean, the Ageas Bowl have set 2 record crowds in their 2 games. I think not far off 10,000 yesterday when they measured the attendance during the run chase for the women's game, which is just superb, and it's only going one way.
It is only going one way. Let's delve in more then to the teams themselves and their starts to the competitions. Obviously, you mentioned that the women have had a few abandoned games that have impacted the competition so far. But let's start with the Welsh Fire, because I think that's the big story so far in both the men's and the women's competition, in terms of they've had a renaissance this year after 2 dismal years in the 100. They've redrafted, they've had new look sides, and they've come firing out. 2 from 2 now, the Welsh Fire, with Shonin Ismail 3 for 12 in the last game. They've been phenomenal to watch. Hayley Matthews, Tammy Beaumont rock at the top of the order. This Welsh Fire side, they look like a force to be reckoned with, don't they?
Well, they are, especially when you consider who they've beaten. Yesterday over Invincibles, and when you bowl a side out of 80. Any side you bowl out for 80 is fantastic. But when it's the side who have won both competitions and near enough is the same squad, that's a fantastic effort. But a couple of days before, they went and beat Southern Brave as well. The team have made both finals. And in that game, it was the run score, and Hayley Matthews, I think, went a bit berserk with the bat in hand, and they made a massive total when you look at it in comparison to other totals in the women's game. But it shows why drafts are so good in this, because Welsh Fire, say it was a county setup, for example, and Welsh Fire were a county, and you had the 2 years they had. It's not so easy just to bounce back. It would take probably a couple of years for them to bounce back. But they got a draft, and I mean, we'll come on to the men as well, but they've nailed it across the board. At least so far, it looks that way. I mean, Hayley Matthews, that was an important retention for them to have, and giving her more responsibility, and equally giving her people around her, so she's not feel like she's on her own, like sometimes is the case with West Indies. But you mentioned the name, Shonin Ismail. I mean, to take her off the open Invincibles and to add her to your own side in one of the best fast bowlers in the women's game, that is a fantastic piece of business, and they're reaping the rewards.
Definitely. Do you think going into week 2 they can continue the momentum that they've started? What's the key to the Welsh Fire side here?
It's overrated sometimes, but it is the star quality. I mean, you look at the top 5 yesterday. Tammy Beaumont, Hayley Matthews, Sophia Dunkley back from a couple of games of rest. Same with Lauren Bell. She's now back in that setup at 3. Georgia Elwes, fantastic regular player for Southern Vipers. And then Aussie Laura Harris, who just will tee off and ball one, and who knows what happens there. But you look at that, that's 5 there. And you just kind of go down the order. Emily Windsor batting at 7. I mean, that's a luxury. She's a fantastic middle order player, also for the Southern Vipers. But for them, really, you've got enough quality players there as well as Ismail and other people in the bowling attack. It's just keep doing what they're doing so far, because if you've beaten the best two teams of the competition in the last 2 years, you're doing something right, and you can probably afford to maybe have slightly off days against some of the other teams and keep picking up those points.
Well, you touched on there them beating the Southern Brave. So let's talk a bit about the Southern Brave. I know you're a big fan of the Southern Brave. They've won two, lost one to start their competition. Someone who's caught my eye is Rihanna Southby with four behind the stumps to win over the Oval Invincibles the other day. Firstly, on the Southern Brave team themselves, looking ahead this year, Anya Shrubsole as a captain, as a mentality. How do you think they've done in the first week? And then, of course, on Rihanna Southby, on her as a talent.
I think they've done as you kind of expect. That Welsh Fire loss was a big blow, especially when you come so close and you kind of Danny Wyatt and Smithy Mandana did control that chase for a large part. You would have thought they got themselves over the line, but you could always look at the way the loss of Sophia Dunkley to Welsh Fire has hindered them. Has given opportunity to Maya Boucher to batter up the order, but that kind of quality batter they're lacking maybe in the top order that has delivered for them so much in the past. But they'd be happy 2-1 with Welsh Fire being one of those games who look like one of the pace setters. They'd be content. But in terms of Rihanna Southby, I mean, wow. All I'll say is if you haven't watched the video the 100 posted on their social media yesterday, which is a highlights of her performance against the Northern Superchargers on Sunday, mixed in with the keeping coaching clinic I think she did before the game with Dinesh Karthik, it's a must watch, because that was a superb display of keeping, because it goes without saying you need a keeper to play cricket. It's an essential of the game. But equally to perform how she did and pull it off, especially when she's down, well, she's carded at 10 or 11 some games to bat, so it's not the strongest suit with the bat, but she delivers with a keep with her gloves in hand. And I mean, some of the stumpings and glove work to take all the catches she did is superb.
Definitely, and I think you'll be happy with 2 wins and 1 loss. No results for them, which is a rarity given the amount of rain we've had.
Doesn't rain in Southampton, that's why.
Yeah. Play all cricket down south. I've heard it all before. Looking down the table, and we are literally going down the table here. So third place at the moment in the women's competition is the Superchargers. They've got 1 win and 1 loss. They've got a decent side. Alice Davidson-Richards has starred for them this week. What do you think they are looking to do going into the second week? And how do you think they've done so far in the first week, given they've got a pretty good side? Kate Cross, Jemima Rodriguez, just a few names who spring to mind.
Well, yeah, Rodriguez, the beneficiary of Alyssa Healy's injury. So a loss for the Superchargers, but Rodriguez, someone who's set the 100 alight last summer and someone I enjoy watching bat as well. So top quality name there, especially Kate Cross as well. But when you look at their team, it's not the best on paper. We've probably talked about them, Welsh Fire, Invincibles, and then the Brave are probably the top three when you look at them. But they've got enough players there. But you do wonder, is there enough batting sometimes? When you look past Maria Kelly, she hasn't always hit the ground running in the 100. But then you've got Rodriguez and Litchfield mixed in with Alice Davies-Richards, whose performance that other day was superb. I mean, to take the wicket she did, take the catch, and then hit the winning runs with a 6, it's almost Stuart Broad-esque in some ways, isn't it? But I don't expect them to really exceed mid-table, really. That's kind of the bar for them. So
Famous last words from you, because
that will age horrifically.
And any side Kate Cross is going to fire. I love watching Kate Cross bowl. I think she's amazing, although she hasn't had the best week, it might be said. Let's move on then to the Trent Rockets, and they've had a shaky start, I think it's fair to say, to this tournament. I think watching the opening match or the opening match, I think one thing that came across is it felt like a very, very new side. You've talked about the drafts and how the system has changed and people going to different places. It feels like the Trent Rockets perhaps have a bit of a weaker side this year. Is that fair to say?
I mean, when you look at it on paper, it's star-studded. But again, all these teams are. They have, you mentioned a new team from the draft. I mean, Lazuli and Harmanpreet Kaur, two big brand new overseas that have come in. I think there's a couple of other names as well. Naomi Datani that's coming from London Spirit for them. But yeah, there's a couple of youngsters in there mixed in with the experience for them. Same as Superchargers, really. You've got the star quality, but is it enough to win you the games you need to? Probably not. But it's a good opportunity for them to build. And I mean, you won't have I don't think they have Cuff and Siver Brunt next summer. So that's the kind of if they can see their need to fill. But for them, it's a team that will win games, same with the Superchargers, but one that probably won't win the big games when it matters.
One person, though, who keeps on performing, had a fantastic summer with England and keeps going on well here is Siver Brunt, obviously captaining this side. She got 49 against the Brave, doing very well. How good is she as a rock for this side, as the experience? And do you think that'll come into play as we progress in this competition?
It's massive. She's going to kind of be like the cool head and hopefully the one they can like, just play around when they're with the bat. And same in the field. Don't know too much about her in terms of captaincy, but I'm sure with you got Harmanpreet Kaur, captain for India around her, and Catherine Siver, but a bunch of other experience. They'll be fine in terms of the captaincy aspect. But when you've got the bat in hand, it just allows everyone the freedom to bat around her when you know she is batting so well and doing it consistently game after game. I mean, it's kind of taken a mix to have her and Harmanpreet Kaur in the same middle order because that is a joke when you look at their international pedigrees.
Okay, let's turn then to another team and the Birmingham Phoenix. Now, they've only managed to play one, I believe, against the Superchargers. And the Superchargers, as we mentioned, won that game. For them, Sophie Devine looked like she was in some quite good form, but they didn't really fire, I think it's fair to say. Now, they have the names in the bowl in terms of the bowling. Izzy Wong, Ali, she's really good. We know she's really good. Do you think she'll start firing more than we've seen? Is it a case of it's too small of a sample size to start judging these teams? I mean, we are judging them, but especially for Phoenix.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when we get beyond kind of like the top three, a lot of them only play one game, some of them none. So we're kind of at the stage where we're just talking about them as if we just done the draft for some. But in terms of Phoenix and Izzy Wong there, I think it's just about getting her confidence back really this tournament, just bowling with pace and taking wickets. I think she did pick up one in that game against the Superchargers, and I don't think she's got one yet in this game today with the originals. But again, they were bowled out for about 100 or 110. Well, not 110 for 8, I think, against Superchargers.
Yeah, 110 for 8, yeah.
And then it was just 87 all out today against the original. So, I mean, you've got the names in the batting order. I mean, that top four wouldn't look at a place on the international stage at times, but they're not firing, and that's a bit of a worry, especially when you have a game rained off. You've only got, 8 group games, I think, in total. You need to get going, and they're really up against it to win today's game. So it's an uphill climb for them.
Thick and fast the games come, so momentum really important and there. Now, let's talk about the Oval Invincibles. And, well, I think it's fair to say they've only played one game against the Fire, but they got absolutely hammered. 80 all out on that pitch, and then I believe the Fire won with about 20 balls to spare. Now, to be fair, on paper, the Oval Invincibles don't, again, have that bad of a team. Winfield Hill, Capsy, Van Yerker, Marizanne Kapp, who's one hell of a player, Maddie Villiers. These are all star-studded players. But to be bowled out for 80 by the Welsh Fire, who, as we've mentioned, they've gone through a transition phase, but they're not, the best side or have been previously. They'll be upset with that, surely, in terms of a first performance in this 2023 competition.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, it kind of goes against all of what we've seen in the first couple of years, but at the same time, I expect they will just put it down to the first game. First game out, I think Welsh Fire's, coming straight off the back of that win against Southern Brave, full of confidence, haven't played. The Invincibles hadn't, so nothing major to worry about. If it happens again, then maybe it's something to look at. But at the same time, they had Welsh Fire 7 down. They weren't all too far off defending 81, which could maybe say something about the pitch, but then it was a bit of because it was a struggle for the men as well that evening. But I wouldn't worry about them. They've got the star names. They'll be up there regardless.
And before we move on from the Oval Invincibles, I think it's worth talking a bit more about Marizanne Kapp because she took 4 for 18 in that match. I mean, she is someone who, if you see her name on a team sheet, you know she's going to deliver, and you know she's got the star power. How do you sum up her value as an overseas player to this side?
I don't think you can put words to describe her value. It's that important. I mean, you only have to look at her performances in both finals so far. I think she was key with the ball first year, and then very important in the tight run chase last summer. And then yesterday just comes in, takes 4 wickets like it's nothing. So for her, she's just going to be there, bat ball regardless. And she's almost in many ways kind of like Nat Silverbrunt. She's one of those cricketers when she's in form, and it always seems to be like she's in form. She's just unstoppable on her day, and that's most days.
That is most days. I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be a batsman facing her. Now, we've touched on all the other sides. You may have noticed we skirted around a couple, and that is because the London Spirits and the Manchester Originals both had 2 games abandoned in the first week due to rain, which means we haven't really been able to see much of them in action. In fact, we've seen none of them in action, really. Harrison, there's been a lot of discussion about this rain roll and how the women's games are being abandoned and the men's games sort of being prioritized, if you will. What do you make of that? And sort of how disappointing is it that we've not seen these sides fire in the first week because of the weather?
Well, I touched on that second bit first. It's very disappointing. When you get any tournament like this, you want to see everyone straight away that's kind of what we talked about all the other 6 sides, getting to understand what they're going to be like on the field. You can kind of weigh up how the tournament's going to go. And I mean, just for the players, they've been waiting for this all year. And unfortunately, it's kind of just been robbed away from them. And albeit chances for qualification could have taken a major blow because of that, because they're both on 2 points. They've both missed out on a potential extra 2 points to that. And that could be massive come the final equation. But for them, and in terms of like the overall competition, it's kind of a catch 22 situation in many ways, because both games have their own timings. And I do believe the men probably do have a bit more flexibility with them because they can go later, and kind of the need for them to get on the field and warm up between games. You would like to see, where possible, both games played, but at the same time, do you want to shorten both games to get both on? Which I don't think would players enjoy playing a shortened game so they both play, or it's one of those where no one can win. If they were to go, oh yeah, we'll play both games in a short period of time, people are going to go, oh, why have you done that? I've paid to come and see a full game and this has happened and blah, blah, blah. But for them, for the women, it is so frustrating because you can't choose when it's going to fall, the rain. But it's happened to them on a couple of occasions. But then on vice versa, it would have been I think it was at Headingley the other night, Superchargers women played their game and then it came down absolutely nowhere for the men and completely rained it off in 10 minutes. So it will happen to both. One thing they've got to look at, though, is to kind of prevent that is flip the games around more. Let's use our brains. If we're going to talk about equal pay and well, not equal pay because that's not right, but equal standing and like equality in this tournament, let's have 50% starting with the men, 50% starting with the women. That way you can kind of minimise that issue and you can also minimise the problem across the whole tournament.
Definitely. Right. Let's park the women's competition there. We'll look ahead to week 2 towards the end of this video. Let's go on to the men's competition, which I think it's fair to say has been all out fireworks, to put it bluntly. Let's dive straight into some of the teams, and we're starting with the Welsh Fire again because we've talked about their struggle through the past few years. I believe they didn't even win a game a couple of years ago, and they've got a new head coach and a new feel to them. It's an amazing transformation for them. One man we've got to talk about from the off for this Welsh Fire side is Shaheen Shah Afridi, because I mean, wow, he's just been amazing. What do you make of his performance in week 1?
When you talk about entrances to a tournament, you dream of taking a wicket with your first ball. You could then fantasize about doing it with your second ball as well, because his performance against the Originals was fantastic. He did go weirdly astray next 8 balls he bowled in a row after that, but to take 2 wickets in your first 2 balls, I mean, sums him up as a cricketer. He's a deadly player in the power play. He will swing it, he will bowl high pace, and he will just home in on your toes. And if you don't put it back there, more often than not, you're out. And that's how cricket works. But again, last night, thought he bowled quite well. Went 2 for 22 off his 20 balls. I mean, unfortunately, they've only gone for 3 more games. And same with Harris Ralph because of international commitments. But then they've signed just now, actually, Matt Henry and Lockie Ferguson. So, I mean, they're not too bad replacing Traff. They're not off the same ilk. But it just shows how important, we touched on earlier, the draft is. If you pick the big names, they will deliver for you. It goes without saying. They will deliver, and Mike Hussey and Welsh Fire have got that one spot on.
Now, we talk about big names, but actually for the Welsh Fire, someone I want to talk about, and this will be no surprise to anyone who knows I'm a Lancashire fan, is Luke Wells, because he was picked up after a fantastic Vitality blast. And then in the first match, he got 57 off 23 balls. Now, in terms of an underdog signing, what do you make of him? And how good of a T20 player is he, given that he wasn't even playing for Sussex's second 11 about 3 years ago?
It's the joy of these tournaments. It gives players a stage they wouldn't have had years ago and given them opportunities. And I mean, the way he came out and played at Cardiff was fantastic. It was a 40 ball game. So the pitch is clear. He's just got to go. And he went with such execution and power. I mean, took apart Josh Tongue first over. I mean, Josh Tongue couldn't bowl any length because Luke Wells would just step away or step in line and just hit him down the ground, square the wicket, you name it. And to have that intent in an opener is massive because a lot of people talk about people taking too many balls up in short form cricket, but Wells is the opposite. I mean, yes, they 12 off 7 as well, not far for 200 strike like that. And that's fantastic for him to have. And especially the Welsh Fire to have someone they know who can tee off from ball 1. If he gets a duck, okay, not the end of the world. You've got Stephen Eskenazi at 3, and he's a quality player. And if he score runs, that scoreboard is going to be moving fast.
Moving fast, the scoreboard. It's the joy of 100-ball cricket. Every ball counts. Let's talk about the Oval Invincibles. And I tell you what, for a team that's supposed to be invincible, my God, have they had some close games. Both Fire and the Spirit nail biters. I mean, Tom Curran last night, absolutely ridiculous. 38 off 18, coming back for that tied game against the Fire. What have you made of this side? Because I think they look strong for challenging for the title this year.
Well, when you look at it, and you kind of go through the side, it's a lot like Surrey with a couple of Kent players thrown in and then the overseas. I mean, Narayan's for Surrey overseas anyway, but sort of Gus Atkinson, the bowler attack, bowled superbly yesterday. He's been tipped up by a lot of people. We'll probably see him in England shirt next summer or sometime soon because he bowls such high pace, and we know that's so key in this game. But you look, Jason Roy bowled Jacks. Jordan Cox played a superb knock last night. Heinrich Klaassen is a good T20 player as well, and Sam Curran, Billings tipped 5 last night, but then Tom Curran. Wow. He just, we know it with the Curran brothers. One of them always has to be involved. It's an unwritten rule of cricket. In any game they play, they will have to be involved in the moment at the end. And it was kind of fit. It was fitting he got back to tie the game because it was the least he deserved. 38 off 18 with 4 sixes. And I mean, they were 4 massive sixes. It wasn't just plinking over the rope. They were going way back. I think one went out the stadium at one point. But yeah, I mean, got right side of the nail biter against the Spirit, wrong side last night, but I mean, still a tie, so happy for them.
First ever 100 tie. Close games. We asked for it last year and we are getting it. Let's turn then to the Trent Rockets, obviously men's defending champions. I mean, they've not looked too bad. Sam Hain, what a signing he is. 63 off 39 versus the Brave. I mean, what do you make of him? And what do you make of their title defence so far?
Well, I think we probably touched on it in our last kind of TCM How's That video, but they lost Rashid Khan night before the tournament, which is not ideal, but I think Lee Gregory, the captain, came out and said we didn't have him much last year. And they were right, and they won it last year. But, I mean, we always talk about the draft. Sam Hain, he was a late pickup. I think it was surprising to a lot of people he lasted so long in that draft because for Warwickshire and Birmingham Bears in the Blast, he's just a constant run machine, and he does it. In recent years, he's picked up his strike rate too, which I know a lot of people have kind of held him down for before, especially in the 50 over format. But he just bats with such freedom, and he always seems to be in that situation where he has to dig his side out of a hole. And 99% of the time, he will dig him out of that hole. And when you've got him in the batting lineup to be able to get them up to a total, and then the bowling attack, Sam Cook, Daniel Sams, Luke Wood, and others, it's just a very good bowling attack to complement that. And you got someone like John Turner on the sidelines, who I rave about from a Hampshire perspective. If they were to add him into the mix, it's kind of scary, and you wouldn't count against them going back to back.
And Daniel Sams, as an overseas Australian for them, he's done quite well with the ball, or at least did in that match. Do you reckon he's a good overseas signing to have?
Without a doubt, I think he was Blast Player of the Year or something. He definitely picked up an award after finals day. He was instrumental in beating Hampshire in the semi-final with the bat in hand. And he's just kind of that cricketer. He will go for runs. It kind of just is the nature is, but he will pick up key wickets, and 9 times out of 10, he will deliver at the death, and whether that's bat or ball. And a cricketer like that is invaluable. We talk about in the IPL. You look at who goes for the most money. Or was it last year? Sam Curran, Cam Green, and Ben Stokes all went for big money. All pace bowling all-rounders. Teams love that, and Sam's is exactly that.
It definitely is. Trent Rocket's definitely going to be one to watch in week 2 if their title defence will come off. Let's turn then to the Northern Superchargers, who I think actually might have gone a bit under the radar, but are a very, very strong side. I mean, Harry Brook, we could talk about him for ages, but Tom Banton as well, and Matthew Short, the Australian, 73, 63, 44. Big scores. And then with the ball, Reece Topley at 3 for 30 against the Brave. The Northern Superchargers might charge on for the title. Is that fair to say?
Nice little pun there. Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of names there. I mean, for another couple of them, Adam Hose, reliable middle order bat. David Visa, well, we know his quality. He does it all the time, really, in T20 cricket. I think he may well have won the most T20 franchise titles out of anyone. Kind of highlights his importance in how teams rate him. Wayne Parnell, the skipper, and then Adil Rashid, just for Adil Rashid in there, one of the best leg spinners in the world. But Matt, just to kind of highlight a cricketer, Matt Short is someone who will play for Australia in T20 cricket. He's had a couple of fantastic big bashes. I raved about him a lot over the winter in this year's big bash. He hit the winning runs to score a century in one game to steer Adelaide Strikers into the latter stages of the competition. And I think yesterday highlighted it as well. He's that sort of cricketer who will just go. Same with Luke Wells. He will just go from ball one and he will score big runs. I mean, he scored over 200 strike rate yesterday. I mean, Brook did blow him out the water with a 230 strike rate, but that's Harry Brook, and he's a freak. We know that. But in terms of Short, we talk overseas. You need an overseas to deliver. That's why you sign any of them. And Short, first impressions, big tick in the box.
Let's turn then to the London Spirit, who perhaps have had a little bit of a hard start to the tournament. Oval Invincibles winning that thriller first, and then of course in their second game against the Originals there was no result. I was just looking at this side on paper, and perhaps they're not really the strongest side in the tournament. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, look at just the batting order. Matthew Wade, Darryl Mitchell as your overseas in the batting department. It's not the biggest names. Obviously, they had Glenn Maxwell and Mitch Marsh. You have to feel for them in that aspect. They had 2 high-quality T20 players who would fill probably 2 of the top 4 spots, to be honest. And unfortunately, unavailability and other commitments have denied them of that. But yeah, the batting looks light, and bowling attack it did quite well last summer. Jordan Thompson, Nathan Ellis in particular, and with Liam Dawson, Mason Crane didn't play the other day. They all played big roles last year. I think they may have just missed. Yeah, they just missed out on the eliminator after looking like they were going to be there for so long. It's a side who will probably be lower mid-table. They would be annoyed they didn't win that game against the Invincibles, because Nathan Ellis would have backed himself to defend 15, a wide, and then a fumble from Washington to allow 3 off that first ball kind of brought you way back into the Invincibles' favour, and then Narayan just hit a 6, and that's that really.
Yeah, that indeed is that. Now, let's talk about your team, the Southern Brave, because it felt to me that they looked a little bit undercooked with the bowling, bit sloppy in the field this week during their games. But then you look at their batting order on paper, James Vince, Tim David, Devon Conway. As a Southern Brave fan, what have you made of their first week? And do you feel that they still have the potential to be a real title challenger?
So the women, I was content with them, but for the men, it's been a disappointing start. I mean, the Rockets game, they probably should have won that. They messed up. They completely messed up the chase. I think said to you last time we were on here, there's no chance they would chase that. And to be fair, they got close, but never really a contest. Got over the line against the Fire, fair play. Good bowling from Tyler Mills at the death, and rescued by Chris Jordan hitting the. I think we have to talk about that. That was a ridiculous knock from Jordan. I mean, he's not renowned for his batting, but he's always shown he's kind of enjoyed doing it. And to come out and hit 70 off 32 or whatever it was exceptional, and rightly given the Meerkat match hero. And I'm sure he'll treasure that cap forevermore, especially with it being Meerkat. But in terms of the team, it just feels unbalanced because especially when someone like Lewis Deploy is out of form, he's your perfect middle order bat. He did well. I think it's in the South Africa tournament over the winter. He played a couple of nice knocks for his franchise there. But if he's not in form, you've got your top three and then Tim David, really, in terms of your batting, and that's not ideal. We had George Garton's been batting at 5, and he did that most of last summer and then started it this year, and he's not ideal there. In terms of the bowling, probably a seam bowler short. James Fuller can have his good days, but he can also have his bad days, as happens yesterday. So it's a bad draft from them. I think it's fair to say they haven't learned their lessons from last summer and haven't gone back to what was so successful in first year because they won it, and they've kind of just gone away from that. Can't be understated how big a loss Liam Dawson was because he brings all sort of balance to the side, and they've never recovered replacing Zai in terms of a second spinner because you've got Rehan Ahmed, who fair play. I mean, yesterday, Superchargers scored 201 in their innings, and Rehan Ahmed has gone for 21 off his 20 balls with a wicket and then an absolute dolly that Overton dropped at one point. That's superb for them. But to the wider point, they don't have a second spinner. They're relying on Tim David, which people always say, why doesn't he bowl more? I think Nick Knight might have said it the other night. But he's not your out-and-out second spinner who's going to give you 15 balls a game for, I don't know, 1.5 per ball or whatever.
Let's finally then turn quickly to the other two teams which we haven't mentioned, which are the Originals and the Birmingham Phoenix. Now, for the Originals, I think they'll feel a bit hard done by the first week, given they lost to the Welsh Fire in a 40-ball game, which is a tough ask, and then an abandoned game. And then for the Phoenix as well, they'll feel hard done by their first two fixtures because again, no result in the first one and no result in the second. So we can't really judge these two teams on much, but they're playing each other tonight, so that should be fireworks, shouldn't it?
I mean, yeah, you're gonna have Mo and Ali against Josh Butler. I think Ali's fit, so that's kind of like your star-studded contest right there, just to pick out two names. But yeah, frustrating one for the Originals really because the other day against the Spirit, they were in a good position, and then obviously the rain came down and curtailed it. They would have backed themselves to defend that total against the Spirit, who we kind of talked about, who don't have those batting resources. But for the Phoenix, they've been hindered by rain so a lot. They were in an all right position the other night against the Superchargers, albeit struggling. It probably would have been another nip and tuck game just to add to the first week of the 100. But for them, nothing to worry about for them. But obviously, it's an uphill climb for them from now, and they're going to have to win tonight. Well, same for the Originals too. Whoever loses tonight, you kind of just say, well, that's your playoff hopes done, which is it's kind of mad to say after 3 games, but and albeit it is still so tight and no one's won twice yet, which is kind of mental to think in a men's competition. But then rain hasn't helped in that aspect, and some may well have. But yeah, tonight should be a cracking contest and hopefully another close one for both sides.
Well, let's hope for the sake of the men's and women's competitions, the rain stays away because they're both looking incredibly tight in this first week. Let's quickly then briefly turn into week 2. Harrison, what would you be looking for as we go into week 2? Who would be your team to watch for men's and women's?
Okay, I think we touched on them a fair bit, but the Superchargers for the men, they've got the Trent Rockets on Wednesday afternoon at 3:00. That should be a cracker because it'll kind of give us an understanding of where both teams are. We've bigged up Superchargers. They blew the Brave away yesterday. I think there's no other way of putting it, to win by 60 runs, and it was never really a chance of the Brave catching that down. For them, Rockets we spoke about as well. Expect them to be right up there come the end. So that'd be a very good game just to pick one out. The women's side of things, I think it's just kind of looking how do the Invincibles bounce back, because for them, that's a big blow to lose, as we touched on, but they got the Originals Wednesday themselves. Looking at the Originals today, that's probably a game they should be able to win, but they'd have to bat a lot better than they did the other day. And then it's just how do Welsh Fire continue? Because if they continue, then we're probably looking at the champions. To put it lightly, they have the players to deliver on the day. So There's a couple of names there.
Yeah, well, plenty more games to come this week. And of course, we will keep you up to date with it next week when we do this all over again. Harrison, thank you very much for this. It's been an absolute pleasure diving into 100 ball cricket, which I think has its haters, but I think if you can enjoy it, it's a great competition. If you enjoyed at home, please do like and subscribe. We'll have Metro Bank One Day Cup reviews coming your way as well. But for now, until next week, it's 100 ball cricket and we love it. Bye bye.